This is the Real Estate Investing Abundance Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Allen. I just want to take a moment to introduce you to our company, Steed Talker Capital. Steed Talker Capital is a real estate investment firm. If you'd like to learn more about real estate investing, head over to our website, steedtalker.com. And while you're there, take a moment to get your one-page guide to the 10 steps to passive real estate investing. Downloading this PDF will also enroll you in our Enlightened Investor Circle, and by enrolling in the Enlightened Investor Circle, you'll be the first to know about any new investment opportunities that we are getting involved with. Look forward to hearing from you. Enjoy today's show. Hello, enlightened investors. Welcome to Real Estate Investing Abundance. I'm your host, Dr. Allen. It is indeed a pleasure to be back with you again today. We're going to take a look at it's not all about deals, doors, and dollars, and how to do financial freedom for profit, and most importantly, for peace of mind. With us today is Terrie Schauer with 20 plus years experience as a real estate investor and property manager. Terrie is the CEO and founder of MyRoom Property Management and Real Estate Consulting, a group based in Montreal, Canada. She is the leading authority on applying mindfulness principles to real estate investing and has written the #1 best-selling book on the topic, Mindful Landlord. On her show, the Real Estate Investors Club podcast, Terrie talks to investors about deals, doors, and dollars. So, Terrie, take us into the show and share a memorable experience that helped you to be who you are today.
Sure. So, you first asked me that question off camera. I'm glad you prepared me for it because I had a couple of seconds to think about it while you were doing the intro. So I'm going to tell a story, which was really kind of a pivotal point in my life. When I was 25, I was studying in Vancouver, and I ended up at a kickboxing event, and a female fighter came up onto the stage, and it had such an impact on me because at that point, there really were not a lot of like women competing in that kind of sport. And I thought, I'm going to do that. And then I went back home and looked myself in the mirror and realized I'm not the person who can do that right now. I was dealing with some anxiety issues. I was studying in a subject that I wasn't super into. I wasn't really aligned with the life path that I was on. I was kind of in an academic degree, and that kind of no longer fit where I wanted to go. And so I realized that I had to do a major mental overhaul in order to become the person who was kind of worthy of that dream. And that's when I discovered mindfulness as a way to align your mind for performance and to make sure that, what you're doing in your life actually matches your deep internal motivations. And, I actually did go on to box semi-professionally in France. And that was also the moment at which, my life kind of took the real estate route as a full-time profession, as opposed to a sideline, which was what I'd been doing up until then.
Well, fascinating story. I think you're the first female kickboxer I have ever met. Maybe even the first kickboxer I've ever met. Definitely a different world than I live in, for sure. Terrie, tell us, what mental skills do we need to succeed in real estate investing?
Well, I would turn that back and say, what mental skills do you need to succeed at anything that you're not currently succeeding at? And for me, the methodology that I used is mindfulness, very simply. And that is understanding how your mind works so that you can get the most out of it. And, if I can give you just like a really quick primer, what mindfulness is not, it's not positive affirmations. It's not mindset. It's really understanding how your consciousness operates. And so if we want to do that really quickly, there is the level of the thinking mind. So like in your head, there's this radio that's always talking, right? Your thoughts are continuously going. You can't stop them, but you don't have to identify with them. You don't have to be one with your thoughts at all times. You then have your emotions, which I kind of use the analogy of the weather. So I can decide to go out for a jog, and it can be snowing, it can be raining, it can be sunny. Those are my emotions. So I can choose to do something. I can be angry, I can be happy, I can be sad, but ultimately it's the actions that are going to produce the results, not the emotions that I'm experiencing. they do have a purpose, but they don't necessarily have to color the actions that we take. And then underneath that, and this is really what we work on, in a mindfulness practice, is pure presence. And so underneath the thoughts, underneath their emotions, there is this thing called the watcher, which is really you or me, or, this kind of like deep presence that we have. And the more you work on mindfulness, the more you're able to identify with that presence. And so to get out of the spinning thoughts, to get out of being buffeted by your emotions, and to really, learn to be with that, active, pure presence. And that once you then do that, it kind of goes out into the rest of your life. And be it, in the real estate field, or for me, like that came obviously like through combat sports, but then it becomes so valuable in whatever you choose to master, whatever you choose to devote yourself to, because it's just an incredible tool to make sure that your mind is helping you and not hindering you in what you're trying to do.
Well, fascinating, Terrie. I like the way that you broke the complexities of mindfulness and consciousness down into a really practical and understanding perspective there. I also like how you referred, I think, several times to the word practice. And I'm interested and really fascinated with how you came to this process of mindfulness. And I'm sure it was through probably an aha moment. It sounds like that aha moment came when you went to the kickboxing event and saw the woman and decided that that's what I want to do, and went home. And the aha moment really came when you realized that you, at that point in time, were not the person who could undertake that. So from that aha moment to actually developing mindfulness, can you chart that route, how you came from that aha moment to really establishing mindfulness as a practice in your life?
Well, actually, I want it to be an aha moment, but if I'm really honest about what brought me to mindfulness, I was having panic attacks, and I had a phase of my life, which was around about the same time, where like I had 3 months when like I didn't dare to leave the house. Like that's how much I was struggling with anxiety.
Wow.
And it's not like I took it upon myself to like discover mindfulness. It's that I was looking for a way out of that sort of anxiety prison. And I went the route that I think a lot of people do when they start having mental health issues. Like, I went to consult somebody, they tried to prescribe me drugs. And then I was like, no, I'm not going to take the antidepressant route. Like, how would somebody fix this if they were going to fix it some other way? So I bought myself a book, actually a great book called Anxiety, Panic, and Phobias. And one of the recommendations in there was start meditating. So I was 25 years old. It was like kind of before meditation was cool. I'm like, okay, how am I going to do this? So, I set up my cushion, and I don't even know, like the internet was a thing then, but like YouTube wasn't a thing. So like then I had to get a book. I got myself a timer, and like I started meditating. And then like I realized that behind that book, there was this whole Buddhist literature that has kind of like the framework that the meditation sits on, right? Like meditation is a practice, but then there's this whole kind of, spiritual and sort of mental framework on which that sits, which is mindfulness in a sense. It could also be Buddhism. And then I got really into that. It also happened that I was studying philosophy at the time. So I was able to take an Asian philosophy course, read the Tao Te Ching, like understand a little bit more the tradition that came out of. And then it was like a process, honestly, between a year and 2 years. Like I saw the, first benefits of meditating and beginning to like rework my mental framework within 3 months. Like it was really fast. So I went from like being debilitated by panic attacks to, understanding fear, understanding what tips you into panic. And like, it was actually, the progression was really amazing. Like once I kind of started practicing and like understanding the fear mechanism, because if you talk about mindfulness, it's a huge thing. And, the human experience has so many emotions, so many different things. But because I was like specifically looking for a solution to fear and an overreactive fear response, finding the answer to that really happened very quickly. And so, I was able to go from being debilitated by it to being like, okay, this is not really an issue in my life anymore, to then going to the kickboxing event and being, I used to be this person that was kind of hemmed in by my fears, and I had dreams, but I didn't think they were possible for me. And then all of a sudden this door opened, and I'm like, wow, if I can beat this thing, anything's possible for me. And then, I sort of kept reading. I came on to Dan Millman's Peaceful Way of the Peaceful Warrior, which was also a big kind of moment for me when I read that book. He had an athletic background, and kind of the main character applies mindfulness principles to, an athletic career. And then I went through this kind of transition of just reworking how my mind worked, basically.
Oh. Well, that really is quite amazing in 3 months, the transformation, particularly given the fact that you were really on that journey somewhat by yourself. You didn't really have, from what I understand here, you certainly didn't have a therapist that was helping you guide you through that. And I think we are learning, at least in the field of psychology, we're learning that drugs are not particularly effective in depression or anxiety, and that they do work sometimes as long as people continue the drugs, but as soon as they discontinue them, the issues reappear. And actually, there's been a number of studies in comparison with the effects of drugs in depression and anxiety, and actually placebos are as effective as the drugs, and yet we still see them massively prescribed, which I think has to do with the power and influence of pharmaceuticals more than the effectiveness of their drugs. And what we are finding is that certainly the individuals who actually do find their way out of anxiety and depression have been doing pretty much exactly what you are doing through various different mindfulness techniques. They not only find relief from that momentarily, but it generally is a lifetime, essentially a cure of those things. So I really appreciate you sharing those things with us, Terrie. It's really fascinating.
Let me just, because I kind of want to go back to two things you said, because I think it's really worth underlining. And I think, what I realized through part of that process is that I feel like our culture really has this tendency to medicalize mental malaise. Let's put it that way. And it's like, you can't, be sad for 2 months without being depressed with a capital D. You can't have a panic attack or feel anxious without having an anxiety disorder. And, when I think back to that phase of my life, like, it really was not helpful to kind of, have that label, because it then leads you to think of yourself as dysfunctional. And then that starts you on the path of like, okay, I need a therapist, I need drugs, as opposed to, no, like, there's just something, like, I have bad mental habits. And like, I think, I don't have too much experience with depression. I'm not going to talk about something that I don't know about, but like anxiety, like, that's something that I know intimately. And like, yes, 3 months was pretty quick to get out of it, but like, those results are available. Like, I'm not some amazing thing, amazing case that did something incredible. It's like, if you really understand fear, you work on your anxiety, you use the best practices, and you implement those things, like, those results are available. And it's really a question of doing the work. And I think, part of the problem with looking for the medical solution is, so first you get labeled with a disorder, then you go to the pharmacy, and then because you feel a bit better, you don't do the work that you need to do. And like, ultimately, sometimes I think for me, it was a bit of a blessing to sort of, go very far down that rabbit hole, be disabled by it, and then be like, no, I actually can't continue with my life unless I address this. And I think, when I look at a lot of the people that I coach now, like, they kind of have this low grade level of anxiety in their lives that just prevents them from being everything they can be. And like, you don't have to go to the extent of being debilitated by anxiety to have it just be this drag that's going to prevent you from getting to the life that you dream about. And so, I really, if I can kind of give people like a call to arms on this, like, it's really, you can beat that demon. Anxiety is one of the easiest mental disorders to overcome if you just use the right tools and change the way your mind is processing things.
Enlightened investors, if you haven't done so already, be sure and click that like button, and also click that share so others can take advantage of the content. And finally, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single one of our upcoming episodes. Yes, I totally agree with you. And I guess I did say it's unusual that in 3 months you turned that around. I mean, I think what was unusual about it is that you did it in really a fairly isolated kind of state. You just didn't have the professional community backing you up on this. But in terms of it turning around in 3 months, I totally agree with you. That in itself is not particularly unusual. What was unusual from your story is how you did it by yourself.
With a loan.
And well, obviously
I
that's
wouldn't have managed by
possible,
myself, but yeah.
but you don't have to do it alone, I guess is what I'm saying. Today there are sources and professionals out there who can mentor you and help you. And I believe that you are one of those sources. So tell our viewers and listeners about your coaching program and how that works and how they can get in touch with you to take advantage of that.
Sure. So I have no claim to fame and no credentials in actual psychotherapy. So I think I'm just going to put that out there right away. I'm really like a real estate coach. And where people find me now. So I've written the book called The Mindful Landlord. And what I do is I really try to bring, people's investment desires, their desire for financial freedom to meet these mindfulness principles. Because very often people come with me, either they own one property and they want to scale, or they know they want to buy their first property, but they're doing something to get in their own way. They've got fear, they've got some like kind of limiting beliefs that are holding them back from either getting started or scaling. And that's where I come in to kind of get them, sometimes they just need a little kick. They need some more knowledge, let's get better financial modeling. Let's give them some help with finding deals or like optimizing deals, whatever it is. Like, so I'd say about 50% of it is actual real estate industry specific knowledge. And then the other half is help with just getting out of your own way. And like I would say 75 to 80% of the time it's fear, because people are afraid of the unknown. They're afraid to take risks. They have, some kind of limiting self-beliefs. Like for me, I really struggled with shyness. Like after I dealt with my anxiety, I had this idea of myself as someone who like couldn't network, who couldn't present myself professionally. I had a lot of like self-esteem issues around that. And, to be able to kind of reconfigure that also really helped me take the next step, because you can't, without a proper network, you're going to run into trouble in real estate. You might be able to buy one property, but if you want to like turn it into something that you do professionally, you're going to have to learn to present yourself in that professional context as someone who knows what they're talking about, and then build a network. And, for me, who was like socially not super comfortable at that phase of my life, like it was a real struggle to do that. So that's something else that I help people with, is just to sort of get out of their own way, feel more comfortable with the network building. And if I can say something about that, like there's also like a science to that, right? Like there's a science to overcoming fear, and there's a science to building your network. And if you approach networking as like a popularity contest, I'm a bit of an introvert. And when I used to go to events and see like the extroverts were out there, like making connections, talking to everybody, like kind of the cool kid at the high school dance. And like, I would walk away from there, like with my shoulders slumped, feeling like I failed. But it's because I was doing it wrong. And I think if you understand the science of mutually profitable business relationships, it doesn't become a high school dance thing where, you have to ask the hawk girl to dance with you or the hawkeye to dance with you. It's just like, no, when I talk to people, I want to see, can I help you? Is there someone I can connect you with it's going to be profitable for you? And then I want to learn also, is there someone you can connect me with that's going to be helpful for me? And if you really engage in that kind of conversation, people open up and they actually will remember you, because like, yeah, Terrie asked me questions. She wants to know, like, what's my business about? Like, how can I help you? Who do I know that you should meet to further what you're trying to do? And when people see that level of interest, like your business card or your like little mental spot is going to move to the top of the pile, just because you actually took an interest, as opposed to like being the social butterfly that's trying to talk to 15 people at an event. No, make 2 connections with someone that you're actually going to talk to afterwards, and it's going to be much more effective. So
yeah, I like the fact that you mentioned the aspect of the introvert. Certainly in the United States, I suspect in Canada too as well. North America is really, as a nation, we're really an extroverted nations. And because of that, I think introverts have a difficult time finding their place in our society. And the gifts of introversion are minimized. And there are so many, 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 many things that introverts can bring to the table that extroverts typically just naturally don't have. I mean, extroverts can develop those skills as well, but introverts come, I think, with a much more innate and natural approach to really developing close and intimate relationships that extroverts, I think, sometimes lack. And I like how your coaching helps, particularly introverts, to realize their gifts and then also to be able to work on those gifts and enhance those gifts. So real estate coaching is often about bigger and better. Is bigger and better always better?
No. I think that's also something that I discovered once I started having some success in the real estate field, is that it's very easy to get caught up in the competitiveness of it, right? Like if you go to events, what's the first thing people are saying? Or what's the size of your portfolio? How many doors do you own? And that then really becomes the metric by which people assess their own performance, right? And I was actually just on a coaching call yesterday with somebody who was having specifically that conversation. He's like, I felt like I'm at this event. I feel like I'm, wasting people's time with my small number of doors, and I feel like I don't really belong here. You get a little bit of imposter syndrome, and the way to deal with that is to just get very real about what your own goals are in real estate, as opposed to being kind of like this satellite antenna for what everybody else is doing. And I can give you a little bit of from my personal history. Like I attained financial freedom with 9 doors. So I had 3 triplexes. I at the time rented them, as a furnished, before that was cool. And that basically was enough money to then go on and purchase my single family home and take care of my family's finances. So you don't need to have a portfolio of 200 doors to hit your objectives in real estate, right? After that, I became interested just in growing the portfolio kind of as something that I wanted to do, because this is now my profession. But in terms of someone who just wants to cultivate financial freedom, you don't need to be the person who has a $20 million portfolio and 1,000 doors to your name. You need to, what's your number? What do you want? And then figure out how much is it going to take to get there? What do I have to do to get there? And the more you remain within your own goals and aligned to your own things, you're not going to find yourself making sacrifices that are to try to get to someone else's endpoint, And for me, that's something I went through. My son is now 6, but when he was very small, I kind of got caught up in this competitive thing. I discovered I built my network, professionally things were doing well. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to make so much money. And then I realized this is actually not what I want. I don't want to be one of those people who has 1,000 doors and spends 80-hour weeks building my real estate thing. I want to work 30-hour weeks, and I want to be home, and I want to have time to pursue my own interests and be there for the family. And that then allows me to, not have imposter syndrome when I walk into a room full of people who are maybe, playing the game at a higher level than I am. So I think that's really important, and not to disparage it, right? Not to disparage people who are pushing the envelope, because I think that that's important in terms of what inspires us, and my analogy is always a sports analogy. Some people are going to compete at a world-class level. Some people are going to just go to the gym every day and enjoy what they're doing. And is it somehow not worthwhile to just be, a gym enthusiast? No, it's going to make you healthier. It's going to make you happier. You're going to get all kinds of positive things out of it. And you don't need to feel like you have to be a world-class athlete for that to have a place in your life. Yeah. So I think real estate's the same thing. You don't have to own 1,000 doors to call yourself a real estate investor. You're a real estate investor with 1 door. Yeah. So...
Well, Terrie, it has just been a delight for me to have you with us today. You just have so much to offer, and I'm so glad that you were with us. And I know our audience appreciates it as well. So thank you for being with us, Terrie.
Thanks, Dr. Allen.
Enlightened investors, don't go yet. I have just a couple of quick requests. You know the drill. Like, share, and subscribe. But we also need your help to build our audience, so please go to your favorite podcast app and leave us a 5-star rating and review. I'll be most grateful. Until next time, prosper and live abundantly.
Thank you for tuning in to Real Estate Investing Abundance, brought to you by Steve Talker Capital, a company working for passionate professionals like you to develop financial independence built on solid, passive real estate investments. As part of our efforts to make the world a better place, Steve Talker Capital contributes to activities and organizations committed to better understand the equine. These endeavors attempt to enhance the human treatment of horses worldwide. Steve Talker Capital, working for a world where all creatures, great and small, flourish abundantly. For resources to develop your financial independence, connect with us at stevetalker.com.